What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have an album review for you, and one that we have been eagerly anticipating for a while. We say that a lot, but we definitely mean it on this one because we are going to go over the latest offering from 200 Stab Wounds. Manual Manic Procedures. This comes out on the 28th of June on Metal Blade Records. This band formed in 2019 in Cleveland, Ohio. This is their second full length. I've been a fan of this band since their debut EP, Piles of Festering Decomposition. And then Slave to the Scalpel came out in 2021, one of my favorite albums of 2021. This is their graduation from Maggot Stomp Records all the way to Metal Blade Records, which, congratulations, guys.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, this is, I would say, like, in terms of, like, the younger, like, newer generation of, like, old school death metal, this has kind of become, like, one of, like, the bigger acts that have come out. This is just vicious death metal, kind of borders on brutal death metal, but also lives in that old school death metal realm, and it still has, like, a little bit of that hardcore meets death metal punch. I don't know. I love them. I've seen them so many damn times.
Yeah, right? I've been a fan of these guys since Slave to the Scalpel came out. That was also very high on my end of year that year. And these guys just continue to pack a punch. It's been a treat to kind of watch them grow, I guess, over the years. And, of course, seeing them live and hanging out here and there. It's been cool.
Hell, these guys have been to my house.
Yep.
I'm also sorry you guys have been to my house. It's a weird place.
It was the cleanest it had ever been, though.
Yeah, like we cleaned up for a crime or something. Anyway, we have been eagerly awaiting this one. Again, this is their graduation to Metal Blade Records, and I had the privilege of actually seeing them earlier this year at the Decibel Metal and Beer Fest, and I got to hear some of these songs live for the first time before I heard them on the album or as singles, and you could definitely tell that there's, like, some change going on in 200 Stab Wounds sound. Not like the most, like, big changes. Like, this didn't, come out sounding like Bee Gees or anything like that. Like, it's still 100% them, but there's definitely some fresh wounds that have been stabbed in this carcass. It's probably this one on the cover here. He doesn't look so good. Now, this is also their first one with their new guitarist, Ray McDonald, and this was mixed by Andy Nelson of Weekend Nachos, and man, like, all right, baseline, again, this sounds like 200 Stab Wounds, but there's more going on, and probably the biggest thing that really stuck out to me right away with this newer material is there's a lot of thrash metal on here.
Big thrashy influence for sure, and it definitely comes out in the first song, Hands of Eternity. Starts off dark, ominous, clean melodies, but instant reminder of old Sepultura or Slayer per se. And it kind of holds on to that feeling throughout the rest of the album.
But it's interesting because it's played their way, I guess, because it's still brutal, it's still heavy, it still has a lot of, like, nasty breakdowns, just brutal as hell chugs, but you notice there are, like, more sinister melodies overall. Like, Hands of Eternity, honestly, the first thing I thought of, and it might have something to do with the fact that we just kind of listened to this album again. That was the re-recording, Cavalera, Schizophrenia. It kind of sounds like Inquisition Symphony, more haunting, more ominous, but there's, like, a lot of intricacy to the riffs. But throughout this album, one of the biggest elements that I picked up is, again, thrash metal. The title track, Flesh from Within, both have huge thrashy elements. In fact, I would say Flesh from Within is kind of a thrash song in general. A lot of this, I would say, like, is death metal with, like, sort of thrash accents on it. Like, you'll get faster sections with more machine gun thrash riffs. Again, kind of closer like death thrash overall, because, I mean, this is definitely 100% still a death metal band. But Flesh from Within, it feels like just a flat-out Sepultura song, like something that could have been on, like, Beneath the Remains, but it just has some death metal accents, like a couple of blasts, and even Steve's vocals on here change a little bit. They are more mid-register than generally his, like, low, just kind of brutal growl.
I get reminded a lot of Chad from Frozen Soul, because that song, yes, Sepultura, but also Bolt Thrower. It's not all a straightforward thrash song. There's definitely still some heavier elements in there, but, like, Sepultura.
I've always thought that this band, like, in terms of, like, comparisons, the main bands that might influence them, at least on their death metal sides, definitely Cannibal Corpse, bands like Skinless and Suffocation. The more just kind of straightforward, brutal, but kind of old school death metal. It definitely flirts with, like, more brutal death metal. Of course, you get big slam riffs. Like, Release the Stench starts off very groove-laden, very 90s death metal. There's a big dive-bomby, squealy lead on it. The groove that sets up that song really sounds like something that could have been pulled off of like Obituary's Cause of Death. It just has that old school 90s Floridian kind of groovy sound. And then as it transitions, because if one thing's still very much intact about 200 Stab Wounds, it's riff changes. But it transitions into like a flat out Dying Fetus style slam riff. So I got like two of my favorite bands kind of in one song here. And transitions on here, that was kind of like a big one on Slave the Scalpel. Like the transitions came at you quick. And it's riff after riff. And generally, whatever brutal riff you were listening to was preceded by possibly even more brutal riff. And that's very much the same on here, except there's different dynamics at play. Again, like thrashier elements, and I would even dare say like a little bit more melody on here.
Yeah, melodies, harmonies. Defiled Gestation actually is full of harmonies and full of like little melodic tags on the end. Ride the Flatline kind of has the same thing, although it's far more speedy. But something also that's on here that maybe wasn't on Slave to the Scalpel was that they hang on to riffs a little bit longer. Like there's still a bunch of changes, but certain like key point riffs are given some time to breathe and even revisited from time to time.
And also on the guitar play side of that, leads too. Leads, I think this time complement the songs a little bit better than they did on Slave the Scalpel. Times where you get like more of a thrashy song, you get like the big Slayer dive bombs and, you know, like kind of the, you know, Jeff Hanneman melodies that get peppered in there. But on the more melodic ones, you get, you know, some really good melodic touches. Like, probably the biggest surprise on here was the two-part song, Led to the Chamber / Liquefied, which, honestly, like, it starts off like a Goblin song. Like, legit, like, you know, the score to Suspiria, like that Goblin. And it's really interesting because there's, like, really not much guitar play up until, like, you know, about a quarter of the way through. It's all driven by synths. They're very analog sounding, like, again, like 70s horror. And this song has like a really interesting build up to it. Like it's kind of got this spooky atmosphere, and then you get these big, heavy riffs, but they are decidedly more melodic. But, you know, again, with this tone on here is monstrous. They still sound sinister as hell, but Steve comes in with a really solid melodic lead on there, and honestly, that's not something that I heard a lot of in their previous work.
And the synths stick around, too, and they kind of play off the guitars and help add to the hook of that song.
And another thing I think this band is, well, they were already good at it, but I think they're even better at it, is long instrumental lead-ins. Like, these guys like to, like, you know, kind of lay down that big, nasty riff right away and kind of let it permeate a bit. Like, let's get you already headbanging, let's get you ready for what's coming. You're totally not prepared, but that's fine. But like Defiled Gestation, like almost half the song is an instrumental lead-in, and it is just a long riff buffet, like an all-you-can-eat riff buffet if you could eat riffs. I mean, there's a pretty high-calorie riffs here. Like, that tone is thicker than a Snicker, so, you know, there's some calories there.
And the bass comes out to play, too. One of my favorite actual moments is on the title track, where there's an isolated bass and drum groove. And that's just kind of a nice setup, kind of a slow burn, if you'll call it, set up into something more brutal.
The drum and bass breakdown on Hands of Eternity, too, like, absolutely savage. And that's another dynamic I like in here, Steve's vocals. Like, I always thought his cadences are awesome, but he's doing a little bit more vocally on here. Like, there's a couple of different ranges. Like, you hear more of his mid-range scream occasionally on songs, and that does kind of complement the thrashier aspects in here, because baseline, I would say this album is definitely faster than Slave to the Scalpel. But when it comes down to the flat-out, brutal, groovy aspects, it hasn't lost any of that edge. In fact, it's gained, like, another edge on here. So it's even more sharp for stabbing or whatever you're going to do with this blade. I mean, it's just 200 stab wounds. You're going to stab things with it. Gross Abuse is exactly that. It is the shortest song on here, but, man, every riff on that song hurts. Like, it is just so damn aggressive. And I gotta give credit to Annie Nelson on this mix. This mix is, it's kind of like just a beefier version of Slave to the Scalpel. Like, everything on it has its own space, and everything on it sounds heavier than hell. The guitar tone is, again, ridiculous. The bass on here, very audible, very chunky. The drums have a great punch to it. Nothing on here gets, you know, too muddy. There's even space for the synths to come in to add a little bit of atmosphere here and there. Everything about this album is just ridiculously heavy.
As far as any negatives are concerned, I really don't have any. I guess I could be nitpicky. I will say there's a part on the last track, Parasite, where when it leads into what is going to become the breakdown, it's got this huge building like triplet chug, and then it doubles and you're ready for this triplet chug beatdown, and then it doesn't happen. Now, the breakdown that does happen in its place is also pretty cool, so like I can't really knock it there, but I don't really have any gripes beyond that.
Honestly, I kind of like that almost bait and switch thing, because, I mean, all right, the standard thing to do, you're leading in with that isolated chug, then they double it. It's like, oh yeah, here it comes. I already have my chair picked out that I'm going to throw. But it comes in with, this actually like very catchy, very melodic riff. And honestly, it's one of the like most melodic moments on this album. I kind of thought it was interesting they saved it for last, but then it inevitably gets a wicked case of dive bomb fever, and I think the entire band just, dive bombed to death at the end. But it kind of ends, very Slayer-ish. I like that. My only big complaint on here was on Release the Stench, and it's not because the song wasn't about farts. It might be. I don't know. I didn't read the lyrics, but I have a feeling it wasn't. But my main issue was at the end of that, you get this isolated moment, like these, drum accents, machine gun riffs. It feels like it is revving up for yet another awesome thrashy section, because all the thrashy stuff on here, all the fast-paced stuff is just fantastic, and it gives this album a different sort of vibe than the previous one. It feels more aggressive in a different way, and I was geeked. I was ready. Let's go. I already got my chair again. We're gonna throw it, probably through a window. And then the song ends, and we're like, oh, dude, no. 200 stab wounds just edged me. It was non-consensual. That's it. Like it was just a weird way to end the song, because it feels like it is revving up. And then the next song is Led to the Chamber, which is honestly another one of my favorites on here, just because it's so different, and I like the whole goblin worship bit. But I don't know, like that track-to-track thing just kind of bugged me because it left me hanging a bit. But that's about it. Like, that is the only glaring thing on here that I didn't like. This band succeeded in making a follow-up album that still has like all the elements that I absolutely love about their debut, but also added a whole bunch of awesome elements to kind of spice up and make it different, because this does stand apart from the debut album. It's not just like 90s death metal worship. There's a lot of like 80s thrash in here too, and that kind of whirled up together with the heftiest dose of brutal riffage that I've heard, at least this week, makes this an absolute banger for me. So I'm going to go ahead and give this 4.5 stars. I dug the hell out of this. This is their longest album to date at almost a half an hour.
Ooh.
I know, it's 3 minutes longer than Slave to the Scalpel, but at the same time, it feels full. Like, this didn't feel like it cut off anything. Like, man, that could have been longer. I mean, yeah, I could have listened to this, stuff for like another 7 minutes for damn sure.
Oh, at least maybe 8.
But it's great as is. It is, just a solid, riffy monster of an album. It packs a brutal punch on like pretty much every track on here, and the band just sounds tighter, more focused. I love the thrashy elements on here, and it's very specifically like a death thrash kind of sound, so it's just more aggression on top of more aggression. But again, they find a way to make it sound intricate, catchy, because every riff on here, I can't think of a riff on here that was like, weak. That didn't happen. If you're a big fan of Cannibal Corpse, Skinless, litany of just super heavy death metal bands, and if you're already a fan of 200 Stab Wounds, this isn't going to change anything. You're still going to be a fan for damn sure. Check this out.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give it a 4.5 as well. Every track was a banger, first of all. Yeah, when you speak of aggression, like this kicks in the door and announces its presence and then doesn't leave.
Eats your dog.
And fucks up a bunch of your furniture in the meantime. Definitely tighter. The additional elements, once again, the element of thrash makes an already heavy band that's already prone to speed and violent riffs even more violent and very well written. The structure of the songs and all the dynamics incorporated just make it more of a, like, an engaging listen. Not that it wasn't before, but you can definitely tell that they really tried to write awesome songs and nailed it.
It's like evolved caveman metal. Like, you know, this album isn't just about dragging knuckles. It also wants to discover fire and maybe try reading once.
Yeah, it's everything you've come to expect from 200 Stab Wounds plus a little more. It's groovy, it's thrashy, it's heavy as hell. Ride the Flatline. In the intro of that song, I was tired for Steve's picking hand. Like, the riffs are moving a mile a minute. The vocal dynamics are great. There's not just growls anymore. There's screams and yells and some more mid-register, and there's call and responses at times, so that's pretty cool. If you're a fan of Bolt Thrower, Obituary, Cannibal Corpse, definitely Sepultura, some Slayer, like, it's all incorporated in this pretty much masterpiece of an album. I think that it did a great job. I would definitely check it out if I were you.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel up in the banner in the bottom right-hand corner. But if you're looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have t-shirts, both old and new. The old ones are discounted, provided we have your size, and we also have hats too. So if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
Tons of stuff coming from Thralls of Metal still, bunch of album reviews. We finally nailed down a date for the Meshuggah ranking, so be prepared for that. States of Metal, is it metal, is it not metal? Nick's never-ending collection updates, because, I mean, that's who he is. If you're ever in this basement, you'll figure it out. All this stuff, though, that we do here at Thralls of Metal, we do for you guys. We appreciate you. Thank you to all of our family, our friends, our subscribers, everyone that reaches out and contacts us and talks to us. We run into you guys at shows. We're going to be at Full Terror Assault coming up here soon. If you see us, please come over and say hello. We genuinely enjoy that. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule, and we are looking forward to overloading you guys with more content. So one more big thank you, and we will catch you later.